This is Brain Software episode 198. We are originating in the world hypnotic epicenter, Toronto, Canada. And today we're going to talk about how to be an excellent direct hypnotist. So stay tuned.
Disclaimer. Warning. The techniques we discuss are always glanative and achievable. If you cannot make them work for you, it's because you failed to press at the blots. So, Lucci.
Hey, how are you tonight? Thanks once again. I don't typically record these intros into the iPhone 5, but that gazillionaire Dr. Dave Ambrose is out testing the Atavachron with his new saxophone kazoo. So there you have it. Thanks again. And it's not like I exactly need the $20 for doing this intro on that, but I know if I said no, then Eddard would be right there like Jack the frickin' Pooh smell. And the next thing you know, he'd be doing the report from Hypno North, and there's no effing way I was going to let that happen. So let's ask the stupid question I'm getting paid to say, and you're all waiting to hear, which is as ridiculous, pointless, and unfunny as it always is. So here goes. Whatever happened to that old tranquility we used to know and love up here in Meaford, Ontario? And that.
These are days of victory. All right, so let's welcome to the very edge of night, Storm Rider numero uno, the Peaky Blinder of hypnosis, and the man who's thrilled to announce that he's not done a hypnosis show in 4 years. Mike Mandel.
Yes, and never will I do a damn hypnosis show again.
So
I loved it for a while, but the last 5 years, no. And I'm just telling you, I got an offer to do a hypnosis show yesterday. Chris told me somebody actually wanted me to.
I called you up and I said, Mike, we got a voicemail. You're going to be so thrilled. He's retired from doing stage hypnosis. But yeah, actually, as of today, we're recording this on March 4th, I think it is, 2022. 2022.
Oh, man.
And 4 years ago, you did your final show of your career.
Let me adjust this.
Standing ovation. It was wonderful.
Fantastic.
Talk to me about Peaky Blinders.
Oh, man, you've never seen Peaky Blinders. I've been wearing my Brian Johnson AC/DC cap for years. It's not a flat cap. This is technically a newsboy cap. And I love it. It's one of the few hats that actually suits me. The other one, of course, being my wonderful... what the hell is that?
I don't know.
Walter White hat.
Oh, yeah, the Heisenberg
that Michael
hat.
C. Anthony gave me so I could be Heisenberg. But
That is awesome.
This hat is just too cool. I haven't put razor blades in it yet, but my wife said I can't.
When you're wearing the shades and the Heisenberg hat and you're driving around in Minden, Ontario.
What scary
people go,
mofo.
dude, that's an awesome hat.
Man.
All right, so let's get on with the show today.
Hang on, I didn't do the yes, Chris. So let's get on.
We're doing an entire podcast here that takes from. Thank you. Last episode was about how to become a better Ericksonian hypnosis. So we wanted to keep the momentum going with that, and now talk about how to become a really awesome direct hypnotist who finishes other people's sentences.
Okay, could you just quickly talk about that message you got from that idiot who said that nobody should do covert hypnosis or something? Remember that? I just got to hear it again. It just even not just so people know the kind of things we deal with here.
It was a comment on Facebook, I believe.
Oh, yes, it was.
I don't know the person, but basically the idea was, and so this, before we get into direct hypnosis, we're going to talk about the indirect stuff a bit. There is this idea that you can use conversational hypnosis. Now, if you're doing conversational hypnosis and you have disclosed it because it is a client coming into you or whatever, that is not covert hypnosis. It's just conversational. You could be giving somebody options, all the stuff we talked about.
Metaphor, whatever.
Or you could conceivably just be at a dinner party or hanging out with a buddy who's going through a hard time, and you tell them a hypnotic story.
Sure.
Where there's some embedded commands or there's a map across an isomorphic metaphor, for example, and you can help people change without disclosing that you're doing hypnosis.
Yeah, you're helping
a friend.
It's not
formal. And so we got a comment that was something to the effect of, oh, hypnosis, if you do hypnosis without telling others, that's evil, and that can never be done for good reason.
And I'm a hypnotherapist and a psychologist, and it's like,
I can't remember exactly the wording, but it's nonsense. These are people who have been poorly trained.
Educated beyond their intelligence.
They misunderstand, I suppose, what conversational or covert hypnosis is all about. If you're delivering a message with congruence that has emotion, that can evoke emotion and offer suggestions to other people, that is conversational hypnosis. And if you don't say, I'm a hypnotist, I'm going to do some hypnotic stuff with you right now, then it's technically covert hypnosis. You create light trance states, you create emotions, you give suggestions, and people's lives get better.
Big deal, right? It gets, if people have the time, I am a hypnotherapist, and I want to straighten you out on this. I'm glad Chris answers, because my answer would universally be bite my wand.
Look, I usually ignore it. All right.
Listen, let's get on with this. We got think tank words, buddy, generated by Savo Bukacek's think tank, which are random words that we are going to put across and map into what we're talking about, if possible.
Okay, so our brains exercised. These are words that we're going to fit into the context of the discussion as appropriate or not appropriate.
All right,
whichever one. So first one,
rhymed.
Oh, it rhymed. Okay.
Second one
is, I thought it said design, but I just realized there's no S.
Having trouble with this one.
Dane.
You're saying it correctly too. And the third one is quality.
All right, so let's go through. What do you get from rhymed?
Well, rhymed, I remember right away when we did that limerick contest through MMHA Engage and let our students come up with funny limericks about hypnosis.
That once was a man with a wig or something.
Yeah, once was a man from Nantucket. Anyway, the bottom line was, he says, ending that multiple ways in his head already. The interesting thing is, what that did was it enabled people, even though it seemed like a silly thing, a contest that Izzy Murray won and wound up in Cydonia as a character, the recording. But the interesting thing was, what it did was it caused people to think about hypnosis in different ways.
Yes.
So even taking something like a silly rhyme can open our minds to other things. What about Dane?
Oh, I don't even know what Dane means. That's really another one of those. I have no idea. I thought it said design.
Of course.
Yeah. I literally... I visually hallucinated an S in there.
We're saying D-E-I-G-N. Yeah, design would be an S in there. Well, I deign to condescend and explain this to you. To deign is to step down, to condescend to something.
Oh, to step down. So if
which I've just done. So actually, I've already worked it into the thing.
So if you're interacting with someone who's kind of a dick, to use the technical term, and they have to step down to your level.
No, you have to step down to their level.
Well, or if they have to step
down
to you.
They're not stepping down to your level.
No, what I mean, if they're a dick, they think they have to, they're superior, they're dickish.
Well, yeah. But
so they think they're
condescending. There's the dick and the daner, right? The daner should be teaching the dick that they're not at their level. Okay, this may go down in history already. It might be the Peaky Blinders hat that's put us in a position where we've used the word dick so many times already that this is no longer a family-friendly podcast.
Yeah.
Okay, so what about quality, Chris? The quality of this podcast is tanking pretty fast.
Quality is, what is the quality is job one, built Ford Tough, or whatever all the different
Quality
expressions.
Indian restaurant in Toronto down on Gerrard Street. Yeah.
Quality matters. Invest in quality.
So we're going to now elevate. We're going to elevate your... Whoa, Peckers, and how this stuff really comes out. We're going to elevate this podcast now.
We're going to get valuable.
The quality. We're using your one word, elevate.
Elevation. It's a YouTube song.
So let's get to the talking points about direct and Ericksonian hypnosis.
All right, let's start with Mike. What is the difference between direct hypnosis and Ericksonian hypnosis, and which one is better?
Oh, man, what a loaded question. First of all, there is no such thing as Ericksonian hypnosis, really. All it is a model where people like Jay Healy and Bandler and Grinder modeled the work of the greatest hypnotist, we believe, who ever lived, Milton H. Erickson, MD, who had so much vast experience. And Erickson didn't do Ericksonian hypnosis. Erickson just talked to people and hypnotized people. But he started as a very direct hypnotist in his early days when he was studying with Clark Hull and so on. But he said later on he realized he'd been much too directive in the early days. So Ericksonian hypnosis and direct hypnosis are not, as some people seem to believe,
opposite sides of a coin.
Two sides of a coin. No, they're on a continuum where there's very indirect maternal style at one end and there's very direct, in-your-face, Peaky Blinders style hypnosis on the other end.
Peaky Blinders style, I love it.
I've got to Rachel Blaze to turn and slash his eyes as we're doing
this. This is a show I'm going to clearly be starting to watch very soon.
I don't know why I didn't know about it before. Nobody told me.
Now, I don't remember if we did a podcast. Do you remember if we did a podcast talking about how life is a series of continuums? I think we did.
Yeah, we did.
It was only a few episodes ago.
We did. It was the last podcast, I think.
Before the Ericksonian one.
Right.
Because we did one on Ericksonian hypnosis and how to become a good indirect hypnotist. Now this this very direct stuff that we're going to talk about. And prior to that, we talked about life as a series of continuums. In fact, even chaos and order are continuums. There's a continuum. I don't know, whatever it is. Continuums. So you've got the indirect style, the direct style. Erickson did.
On a continuum.
Yeah, there you go. Erickson was very indirect, at least later in his career.
Right.
And then you've got who are the best people to learn from sorry, that's not what I meant to say. Yeah. We can get to that, obviously.
Edit that out.
But no, that's fine. So there's two ends of the spectrum, right?
Yeah.
You have a spectrum, and what we're saying is learn both. Learn to be a great indirect hypnotist, but also learn to be very direct.
And this is how we teach hypnosis. When we do our 5-day architecture of hypnosis or our online training, we teach people to move freely back and forth on this continuum instead of being locked into a specific model. So this way you can be as indirect as necessary or as possible and as direct as necessary. You just scan back and forth like Jack the frickin' Continuum scanner.
That's it. Yeah. And there's some great trainers that teach the indirect style of hypnosis, whether it be conversational, whether it be metaphor. We cover all of that in the MMHA.
People like, Rossi and Zeig and Stephen Gilligan and Overdurf, some really great indirect trainers. Also, I would include Richard Hill in that with Mirroring Hands, which is as indirect as you can get, and it's freaking brilliant hypnosis work.
Fantastic. Okay, so now let's shift gears, talk about the direct side of things. Who are some good examples of direct hypnotists? What would be
the classics? Let's go back to Dave Ellman, of course. Jerry Kine was very direct in his stuff. George Estabrooks, Colgate University. And we see Gil Boyne. Gil Boyne was extremely direct. In fact, Charles Tebbets was very direct. He learned from Boyne. So a lot of these people sort of learn from each other. Carl Smith, modern day.
We gotta throw in
Carl.
If we're gonna pick people who are younger than us. Carl Smith. Actually, I think technically Carl is a couple of months older than me. Yeah, so we're about the same age, Carl Smith and I. But Carl would be very much a modern day direct Ericksonian, Ellmanian style hypnotist.
Right, more like Dave Ellman stuff. And Carl is trained in that. He's a phenomenal in-your-face direct guy, and he does a fine job of it. But he at least understands the importance of both sides of the spectrum. This
100%.
is just more his style.
And yesterday we were doing a training session with some of our students. We were talking about this. What's the difference between the people who learn the Ericksonian style and why we teach it first, because it's harder to learn typically, versus the people who only learn the direct approach. And what I said is, if you only learn the direct approach, sometimes you don't build the rapport skills that are so essential.
Right.
And that's where I like Carl Smith. He gets the rapport side so thoroughly, even if he's not doing Ericksonian hypnosis.
Right.
That rapport building comes from the indirect side or the NLP side or whatever.
Yeah.
You have to be likable. You have to be a good person who builds relationships, whatever the style of hypnosis. But if your only training is telling people what to do, sometimes you fall down on the rapport.
Correct. And Carl, you watch him work. He works standing up with a client. He's always standing.
Exactly.
Because he's totally present, focused on the client and engaged the whole time. So cheers, Carl. Great work.
All right.
Now, the direct hypnotist attitude is much more confident. It is considered paternal, more fatherly than maternal. And it's very, very authoritative. Some are so authoritative, like good old Peter Ravine. He's been gone for years, but I saw him do his hypnosis show. It was just, what I'm telling you is the truth. What I'm telling you is the truth. I mean, really like in your face, almost Dracula-like. And it worked for him because he had the bouffant hair and he had the big beard and the eyes and the freaking hands.
The whole outfit and the attitude goes together. I mean, can you imagine him coming up on stage and saying, it's possible to consider that the things that I'm telling you can be true in certain ways for different audience member, whatever it is. It'd be weird.
Right. It would be very
would
weird.
not fit with his.
One of the other things we're going to see very powerfully used in direct hypnosis is the PGO spike.
The shock.
There's a shock,
element,
a startlement. Startlement.
Let's talk about that.
Okay, well, when someone is startled, when there's novelty, surprise, all of these cause a PGO spike in the brain to varying degrees. PGO spike runs from the pons, deep in the midbrain, geniculate body, right to the occiput in the sight center in the back. This is a huge band of fibers that causes a very rapid, it's a super speed highway, and it's part of your survival mechanism. So
it's the Autobahn of your brain, man.
Somebody leaps up with a knife and goes, your PGO spike reorients you instantly to go into survival mode.
Yeah.
And you can use this by startling someone by turning around
yeah,
this kind of thing.
Now let's talk about another context where PGO spikes happen, and that is comedy, right?
Yes.
So in a less serious way, obviously, like less scary. So a PGO spike is anything where there's shock, novelty, or surprise. So a magic trick might be novelty. Oh, how did he make that disappear? Wild, right? Smaller PGO spike. Or surprise could just be the unexpected, could be the humor. So the rule of 3 in comedy, you might have 2 normal things said. Oh, I went to the store.
She's
and
trying to
whatever
get your
it is.
attention, Chris.
Blinded
you with my Peaky Blinders hat?
That was really good.
PGO spike.
There's a PGO spike right there. But if somebody tells a joke
fantastic.
and the punchline is not what was expected, that creates a PGO spike, a ha-ha PGO spike.
Yes, that's
There
right.
we go.
And it's
So we can do this in hypnosis by preparing someone. Do this. Focus your attention on the palm of your hand.
Fire PGO
Right.
spike, yell sleep, even though we know it's not sleep, so don't bother writing because we don't read those emails anyway. And you're saying sleep. It's flying by the critical faculty, the guardian at the gate, the doorman, and it's putting them into a trance very quickly. As Gil Boyne said, it's just as deep as any other trance you're going to get through doing direct suggestion or Ericksonian, but you have to then take control of the trance quickly or they'll come out of it.
All right, so you've covered now the PGO spike.
Now,
All right.
with direct hypnosis, we are seizing the locus of direction, but not the locus of control. We believe a huge mistake hypnotists make is seizing the locus of control of a session. The client has to be in control of what they're running. It's a different way of looking at it, but we seize the locus of what we're directing their attention to. Now think of this.
Yeah, in a sense, highlighting the path forward and giving them a clear set of instructions on what to do without being overly controlling in how exactly they do it.
Yeah, and especially if you're working in therapy, if you're doing the direct stuff and you're over the top with it, you can really freak people out. This is why we think it's important to be able to slide up and down or back and forth on the continuum. If you have someone who's very quiet and a timid personality and quite fragile, you don't want to dominate them with this paternal approach. You probably scare the crap out of them.
Yeah.
Which can be messy.
I'm so glad that you didn't say slide up and down the fire pole. That just would have been weird.
We'll edit that out. So now let's look at this. Stage shows rely on a lot of direct hypnosis, a lot of in-your-face stuff.
This also came up in our training session yesterday, Chris. So let's bring it up here. And it's a really good example of why you would want to understand the indirect style of hypnosis and the direct style of hypnosis. Perfect example. So the context is you're doing a stage hypnosis show. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you've got to build a relationship with the audience and give them stories and embed suggestions and create emotions.
Build rapport with the entire audience. So people are going to want to volunteer.
That's
build
all
in
indirect.
Presuppositions. And when you come up and volunteer in a few minutes, all of these things are indirect and very Ericksonian in that sense. But once you have them on stage, the number one, apart from the ecology of everybody there, the number one thing is to keep it moving. It must be entertaining. So there'll be a lot of highly directive stuff.
Yeah. And so you're, what do we call it? Not pre-talk so much, but
brilliance.
What do you? My brain's not working, so clearly I'm not brilliant today. But when you're up on stage and you're starting to do the discussion and you're telling stories, what the heck do you call that again? Well, let's just call it your pre-talk.
Yeah, it is
pre-talk.
It's
pre-talk.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
So
some call it a
by the
lecture.
way, 4 years ago today, when Mike did his final show,
yesterday,
we recorded it.
Yesterday.
So it's yesterday.
Yeah.
4 years.
The
yesterday.
3rd. Yeah.
Are you kidding?
No.
Oh, you know why? It's probably because Facebook told me, 4 years ago, and I had posted the video the next morning.
There you go.
There you go. So 4 years ago when Mike did his final show, we recorded it. We also recorded another show that you did, and they're both in the Mike Mandel Hypnosis Academy. If you want to join even on the free trial, you can watch a recording of how the pre-talk works, how you're engaging the audience, how you're creating powerful, positive emotions, having people want to come up and volunteer for the show. Now you've got them on stage and you're getting them. Now you're switching into direct mode, right?
Right.
You're giving them like suggestibility tests. They come from the field of direct hypnosis, not indirect hypnosis.
Correct. Right. That's right. So as soon as you're doing suggestibility tests and so on, it's much more directive to build in heteroaction. Now, again, the whole idea of depth with direct hypnosis, not on stage, but just in general, you're going to focus on somnambulism because if you're doing hypnotherapy, it was Jerry Kine who said it, and it's a great phrase. He said, that somnambulism is the working state of hypnosis. And he's right. We want to put people in a deep, robust trance that's not going to be fragmented by them opening their eyes or somebody knocking on the door or something. And we can do the most solid and powerful work there, including getting to Vedic ego states and the ones in the bomb shelter and so on. So we're aiming for depth. We're not just telling a metaphor or something, but we're going to zone the person through the floor deliberately.
So would you say it's accurate that someone who is very much pure into that conversational talking Ericksonian style of hypnosis maybe won't tend to focus as much on depth of trance, won't even do deepeners necessarily. And that's why it's a good thing to blend the two together.
Yes, and to be able to structure your sessions moving back and forth freely. Now, a direct hypnotist may use guided imagery, though, which can seem to be extremely Ericksonian, but we're not telling a metaphor. We're walking the person through a process. Maybe they want to fix their golf game, and you see yourself on the golf, you've got them in the deep trance, and you hit that perfect drive, and it's 6 inches from the cup, this kind of thing.
Okay, so in a direct style of hypnosis, you may direct someone through guided imagery of some sort. Do you have an example of that?
Yes, I told you this the other day, and it's an interesting one. I worked with a guy whose girlfriend broke up with him, and he was just absolutely devastated. Put him in a trance, direct hypnosis. He liked swimming, so we imagined he was underwater, and he was held underwater by this octopus that wouldn't let him go. And that was his bad feelings. It was all metaphorically built into it.
Interesting.
We had bolt cutters and cutting these tentacles, 3 of them cut, and the octopus can no longer hold him as tight. He reports a week later, I'm starting to feel a lot better. Then the second session, we cut a couple more, and the octopus floated away and couldn't hold poor octopus.
Who showed up in their scuba gear with the bolt cutters?
That was me, Chris.
That was Mike.
Yeah,
all right, there we go.
Gear, though.
So, you were the hero. There you go. All right. But not a jukebox hero.
What about regression?
Okay, what about role regression? So standard age regression comes from the model of direct hypnosis. In fact, we have a playlist on YouTube all about direct regression, age regression methods.
Now, there's a different ways of looking at this. I mean, there's a sense that when you think back to a pleasant memory and get a pleasant sense from it, you are regressing to a degree. But we're talking about trance regression and we know the person's not going in a freaking time machine. So don't write those emails because we won't read them.
Go back to that time right now. Be there in that classroom, whatever it was. Yeah.
Well, it's not surprising that a lot of these things work so well in the direct hypnosis style, because all the NLP patterns, like the swish pattern, anchoring physically, and doing submodality shifts, all of these can be done by a direct hypnotist.
Of course.
And we'll have a phenomenal result because we say trance is an amplifier of human experience.
In fact, that's very true. If you're a direct style hypnotist and then you go on to learn some NLP interventions where you're literally telling people, you're not giving them so much options in NLP. You can flower it up with your language, but you're pretty like if you're running an intervention like Walking with Grace and Power, you're telling the person exactly what to imagine, what to do, how to step, and you're reinforcing and guiding. Whereas if you come at it from an Ericksonian angle, you might just flower up the pre-talk a bit. I don't know. There's all kinds of things you could do.
Now let's jump to giving suggestions. Direct suggestions tend to be very specific, and this is good. Even the most dyed-in-the-wool Ericksonian, when they have somebody in a very deep trance, you'll often hear them using very direct suggestions, and your suggestion should be repeated in different words. We don't believe this nonsense that you just have to say it 15 times. You're going deeper now. You're going deeper now. You're going deeper now. Your problems are gone. Your problems are gone 15 times or whatever, 3 times. Say it in different ways. Person has insomnia, and you'll sleep well through the night tonight. Your sleep will be deep and refreshing. You'll have wonderful, pleasant dreams.
You'll wake up in the morning feeling totally refreshed.
You're saying the same stuff. They're going to have a good night's sleep, but you're saying it multiple different ways. So you're repeating it, but in different ways. One of them will hit, maybe all of them, and they're very simple. You're always stating these suggestions in the positive. You're telling the person what will happen, not what won't happen.
That makes perfect sense.
Now, I want to just, we have a special report here before we can do our wrap-up, Chris, so let's get there now.
All right. So we have a special update from roving reporter Brado in Hypno North, Mayford, Ontario.
Yeah, how are you tonight? Thanks once again. So things are pretty crappy up here in Mayford and there's still no sign of the snow disappearing anytime soon. I'm looking for something to do because there aren't many hypnosis patients coming into the clinic in my kitchen, and those who've come in aren't exactly satisfied customers. I mean, I work my ass off for what? I get rid of a person's problem. They complain I'm charging too much in that. The fact of the matter is I only charge $25 for an hour session, so I figured I'd maybe take a break from doing therapy and hit the hypnosis books and that. Then I saw an ad in the Owen Sound Sun-Times for a weekend-long seminar on hypnosis. Well, there's some roving guy from Europe called Professor Lafarge. He was a big wig in hypnosis, and he was certifying students at the Best Western Hotel in Owen Sound. Well, I'm a solid hypnotist, as you know, but I got thinking that if I didn't go to this, then some dick like Eddard might go and get an advantage over me he could use with his hypnosis patients. So I phoned on my iPhone 5 and booked it directly through the hotel. It was only $40 for the weekend, so that seemed fair. So I got pretty excited as Saturday got close, and then Eddard knocks on my door, so wound up you'd think somebody massaged his pouch with a cactus or something, and he'd seen the ad and he booked his spot too. So clearly he wanted to go and make sure I didn't get any advantage over him either. So since we're both going, we decided to head to Owen Sound together on Saturday morning. We took my truck, which was running pretty good again, since I put 2 liters of freaking oil in it. So we're actually getting along pretty well because Professor Lafarge had apparently hypnotized the crown heads of Europe and Idi Amin and Lee Harvey Oswald too. And it was pretty exciting, and the parking lot was really full, and Eddard ran in to grab us a couple of seats while I parked. So I won't Ken Sweatman this, but I'll just say it was a huge freaking letdown because when Professor Large came out in an effing cape and wearing a top hat and a stupid monocle and waving a huge hypno spiral, I could see it was Duder. And Eddard was pissed off too because he'd somehow forgotten Duder's last name was Lafarge, even though it's his cousin, which is a stupid name too. So I just drove home and I left Eddard there. And the worst part was all the dicks who showed up for the non-event probably thought it was great and that they got their money's worth. So this is your old pal Brado from Hypno North starting to hate hypnosis.
Well, the other thing we say about why we want people on a continuum of working between direct and indirect is it gives them options. And the law of requisite variety from cybernetics basically says in any system or group of systems, the system with the most choices and options is the controlling system. So if you learn how to intercede on anywhere, interact and intervect and all of these
intercede,
intersect on this continuum, the more options you have, the better hypnotist you'll be.
So the law of requisite variety, I love it. Have options, learn lots of stuff. And that brings us to our second point, which is when it comes to hypnosis, learn both styles, learn the full continuum, right? So if you'll have more options, more flexibility, you will learn things from the Ericksonian style, you'll learn from the direct style, and you'll be able to apply it in conversations, in therapy, or on stage or in business meetings or whatever it is.
And we teach people to be indirect like Milton Erickson and as in your face as Dave Ellman or Charles Tebbets or any of those. So learning both of them is great. You get your flexibility. What determines how direct or indirect you should be?
This is a good conversation to have.
It's the context.
Yeah.
Everything is context. Who's the client? What are they working on? Or what is the situation? Are you doing street hypnosis? You probably don't want to do some Ericksonian fluff standing on Yonge Street in Toronto. You want to be in your face doing suggestibility tests and right into the power of it.
Well, in fact, even let's say that you're the usual context I'll bring up for a conversational style setting is a buddy. You're sitting having a beer maybe at the pub and buddy's got a problem at work, whatever it is. You could start conversationally asking some questions. If you detect good engagement and you've used maybe a yes set or a compliance set, you could even get very direct there. Put your hand on the table and stare at it. Let's do a little exercise here, Tommy, or whatever the guy's name is. Stare at your hand and begin to imagine, and you can start getting quite direct in what you're saying and help resolve the problem right then and there.
Yes.
Whatever it is. I mean, the stare at your hand doesn't matter.
That's right. So we say be as indirect as possible, then you're very subtle, but as direct as necessary for the situation, which leads us to our empowering question, Chris.
All righty. So that's a good wrap up. I think this was actually quite a tight little episode.
Tight little episode.
As we approach 200. 200. All right. So let's get to your empowering question for episode 198. And that is, ask yourself, am I more direct or indirect as a hypnotist? And what will I do to build in ultimate flexibility so that I can slide in either direction on the direct and indirect continuum?
Nice.
All right.
And I have a metaphor for you, which is one better than a metaphor. 1994 was my third trip to Australia.
All right.
And I took my wife with me. She wanted to see it. Well, she didn't. She hates traveling, but we had a blast. And my agent, Kingsley, was my road manager, Kingsley. We were going all over Australia and having a blast with his girlfriend and Heather and I. And my birthday was approaching. It was my 41st birthday.
Oh.
And put this in the back. I hadn't really thought about it. I thought we'd probably celebrate it when I got home. But I wanted to buy a didgeridoo, and I kept seeing didgeridoos in the stores.
That's one of those Australian
unique
things,
sounds. Yeah. I'd seen them in the stores, and they were expensive, and some were handmade. And they were all handmade. Some were quite beautiful. I kept going to buy one, and Heather kept saying, no, you don't need that. You're not going to bring that back on the plane. I mean, over and over. And so I just sort of got used to this and thought I wasn't going to get one. Then, the day of my 41st birthday, Kingsley says, I'm going to take you out for a coffee. We'll go to a friend's house. So we go to this place in Sydney. Beautiful house. We go inside. This guy greets us at the door with a leather Crocodile Dundee hat. He's got a hook for a hand, a clamp, instead of an actual hand. And his hand had been blown off in an explosive accident. And his name was Charlie McMahon. Charlie McMahon is considered to be the greatest non-Aboriginal didgeridoo player in history. He jammed with Midnight Oil and his own band Gondwana Land, and he's incredible. And he said, look at this. He goes, there's your didgeridoo, Mike. And he handmade me and hand-painted a didgeridoo for me and showed me how to play it. And I thought, man, it's just one of those things. The brick from Milton Erickson's house, the piece of Admiral Nelson's ship, you know.
The Angus Young guitar.
The Angus Young guitar. And we have a didgeridoo made for me and given to me by Charlie McMahon. Doesn't get any better than that.
Wow. Thanks, everyone, for listening. This has been episode 198 of the Brain Software Podcast. And we had rhyming fun and Mike deigning. No.
Deigning to condescend.
And what was the third word again? What was the third? I don't remember. And we had a very quality experience.
Quality podcast. Now we're going to have a quality lunch. We're going to start with a pint of IPA each.
That's right. We're going to enjoy ourselves today. Yeah, we're going to have an unusual beer at lunch. We never do that, but we will this time. Just because this is episode 198. Make sure you head on over to MikeMandelHypnosis.com if you're interested in learning more about hypnosis. Our MMHA, the Mike Mandel Hypnosis Academy, starts with a 14-day free trial. Yeah. Anyone can have it. You can join us. It's awesome. Thanks again, and good night.